All right, it's morphin' time. Dragon Sword.
This is Jason David Frank, and you are listening to This Week in Geek, and it's morphin' time.
You may know me as Tommy Oliver. You may know me as the Green Ranger, but I am not the man you know. I am a man from a different reality. I conquered my Earth and became someone infinitely more powerful. I am Lord Draken. Now I'm coming back to this world to conquer the Power Rangers here and everywhere else, wherever and whenever they're hiding. And that's just the beginning.
Dr. Banner, melted by gamma rays.
Brainiac, what is it?
Look, I just want some pants. A decent pair of pants.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
It's morphin' time!
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
My spider senses are starting to tingle.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
"It's clobbering time."
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to TWIG Sunday Funnies. I am one of your hosts this week, although I'm the interim host until our main guy, JT from Saskatoon, gets a little bit more comfortable in the driver's seat. And what kind of driver's seat are we going to be having on this particular voyage of the show? Well, we're going to be diving into the world of the Boom Comics Mighty Morphin Power Ranger series, which has been running for a number of years. And well, we're going to talk about one of the main event series that happened all the way back in 2018. But as you can infer, I am not alone on this more phenomenal quest across the shattered grid itself. I am joined from Saskatoon.
Hey, it's JT from Saskatoon. How's all y'all doing?
I am doing quite well, and JT will be hosting the show next month, and we'll tell you what we'll be talking about that a little bit closer towards the end. And, of course, we're going to be bringing in our producer, engineer, and I don't know how many comic books you actually do read, Alex.
I read a lot more before. I've got a bunch of hardcovers. I read what I need to read. Like last night reading 15 issues.
So, yes, guys. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about the Boom Studios comic event Shattered Grid, which is now just about 2 years behind us. It started in March of 2018 with issue 25 is when I started getting into the Power Ranger series, because it was told to me it was going to be something really, really, really special. I'd read the previews of it. I saw the commercial that aired on like YouTube when they brought back Jason David Frank, and it had like a really good production budget. And I was really excited for it. And the basic pitch for the story is, what if there was an evil version of Tommy Oliver, which the Lord Draken character had appeared in the Boom comics previously? And what if he decided to go nuts and kill or just take out, destroy, however you want to put it, other Power Ranger teams? And he was exploring the morphing grid for his ultimate plan of domination, which is to control all eras of reality. So from Dino Thunder to RPM, to Samurai, to Mystic Force, to Lost Galaxy, you name it, he's been there. He's conquered it. And what do our 5 heroes with attitude do? Well, they do what they do best, and they save the day. And this is the series that really got me back in the comics. Like, I started consistently buying again, but we'll kind of swing around the kind of table with this to get our initial thoughts of it, because I have a feeling I'll probably have more thoughts than like you guys do. So I guess I'll throw it to JT first. I don't know what your experience is with this, so let's get your initial thoughts on Shattered Grid.
Well, I mean, my experience with the Power Rangers goes all the way back to the original TV series in the 90s, which I was looking at some tidbits before the show started. There's been 919 episodes across 21 different series. since August 28th, 1993. Dear God, I've watched a lot of television. As far as the comics go, like my first Power Rangers comic was actually from like 2 or 3 issues that Marvel had the license in the 90s. It was like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers during season 3, and it was a flip comic, and the other side was a Masked Rider. We don't talk about that series. And I've always read comics, obviously. That's why we're doing this show. I was in with Power Rangers from the 0 issue that came out. I mean, the initial arc of the series it's like a week removed from Green with Evil. Tommy is still struggling to find his place. And I just was kind of sucked in because it's still the Power Rangers I knew, but there was I don't want to say maturity, but they were taking it being comics and you can do a lot more in the medium than the show. It was more serious without completely becoming an adult comic book. Like they made it heavier. You get a little more into the Rangers' lives and how they, because in the show it's just like, hey, we got powers, this is awesome. In the comics, they're constantly questioning themselves, wondering, are we going to be able to handle this? They got to deal with their own lives on top of their superheroic lives. I was all in. So I was going to ask, were you in from the beginning, Alex, or you said you were just reading the crossover here?
Yeah, just reading the crossover. I had read, maybe they had comics I remember back in the day, but they were 90s comics, meaning mostly garbage. I think I had picked up, was issue 1, or was there like an issue 0 that was like a free comic book day one, or was it like 25 cents or something? I think I remember reading that.
There was a free comic book day issue. Like there's one that's actually tied into this crossover. And there was I'm just looking at
Wasn't there
my
an introduction
collection
one, something like that?
There was a 0 issue, which was, they sold it. It was a actual issue that they sold for. It might have been free.
It was either free or a quarter. I remember paying for it a couple of years back.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty cool, but it wasn't something that interested me. I was like, I'll wait till there's trades. And then it just fell off the map for me. And then you guys were like, let's talk about this. And I went, sure. I know Birdman had been raving about it. It was the last couple of years. He's like, I need to read the next issue. Why do I have to wait a month? And I remember him being like, I would go over to visit and he'd be like, oh, just a second, I'm finishing reading my comic on my tablet. And I was like, okay. And I just remember Birdman saying that it was better than the TV shows. And I was like, okay, so I'll check it out now. Now I had a chance to burn through reading all of it in the last 48 hours or so. And I enjoy it. I like the concept. I feel there were some pretty big inconsistencies from issue to issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of jumps where it was a little too fast. You know what I mean? Like then again, so is the show. If you try to go back and watch, right? The show is like boom, 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 boom. In 20 minutes, they get like 60 minutes worth of stuff done. Now, that being said, I did feel it was a little jumbled, and it was thankfully you tried to give me a correct reading order so that I wouldn't be lost and having to like pull it together myself. And overall, it was pretty good. Really good concepts. I have issues with some of the drawings themselves. They seem to go off model a fair bit, and it's supposed to be the same artists on a bunch of them, but I noticed like the same artists are getting people's character models, their facials, everything. It seems to be off from issue to issue. Some issues are like super high quality, and then some issues are like, what the hell is this? Like, I understand that being rushed is one thing, but like there's also times where you could tell they were trying to cram so much in that like, oh, there's like 16 word bubbles on this page. I'm like, really? Do we need that much? Really? You couldn't have spread it out to another page? But I feel like it would make for a really good animated miniseries.
Yeah, if they did something like the Batman Ninja Turtles animated film that came out last year, something like this would be really good. I should mention,
like, if they gave it like, and I mean, not necessarily like super long, but if they, instead of like the average like 74-minute, Warner movie, if they gave it like 95 minutes, like regular feature length, they could make a really good movie out of it.
Oh yeah, no, and I should mention, as Alex mentioned, folks, the the reading order is that I provide them isn't exact. Now, technically, if you go by the crossover card that you find in the back of most issues that involve with the crossover, they provide a list. It more or less is the proper reading order. The only caveat to that, and unless you really want to read everything involved, you can ignore the Go-Go Power Rangers issues that are listed there. I would say, except for the final one, which is Go-Go Power Rangers 12, which there is a fairly significant event in the end of that issue that goes into finale, which we'll speak about as we get to it. So, but to concentrate on, we are just going to talk about the Mighty Morphin issues for the purposes of the review here. And the artist that was, as you were talking about the artist there, Alex, the artist on the Mighty Morphin issues was, I'm going to see if I don't mangle this name, is Danielle D. Niculo, with inks by Simona Di Giafelice. I think I said that right. Written by Kyle Higgins. This man is like unto a Zordon for us Power Rangers fans, because
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the writing was consistent.
Yeah.
I just felt that some of the art direction was off, and it wasn't just me going, from the Go-Go to the main series. Within their respective series, they seem to be off a fair bit. The writing is consistent across the board.
Yeah, no, Daniela did most of the art in the Mighty Morphin issues, and she did some work on the final issue in the crossover, which was a one-shot called Shattered Grid, like just proper Shattered Grid. And, in the individual issues, which is what I worked from reading the crossover, there are all the regular issues have little side stories at the end. Like the original first few issues of the series had a Bulk and Skull side story going on. Then they had Blue Centurion and Ninjor,
which I absolutely hated, by the way.
Yeah, I read the first two and I went, oh no.
I will say this: the Blue Centurion and Ninjor series is way better than the Squat and Babu. And I have to be, of all the minions, none have ever measured up in my eyes, at least in comedic value and just sheer huggability, as Squat. I'm sorry. Actually, Squat's my boy.
Squat and Babu's story I found got better as time went on. But Blue Centurion and Ninjor was insufferable.
You know what I would have rather had? What was that episode of Power Rangers where Bulk and Skull imaginarily became Power Rangers and they had was it like pizza and fast food powers?
They got
like
the Power Bite, the burger. They became like the Orange and the Purple Ranger or something.
That was one of the backup stories, and it's actually because the whole comic is supposed to be in canon with the show.
I would have liked if that was at the end of every issue. You got one or two panels of them in either a dream world or in Bizarro world, them being Power Rangers. That would have been interesting.
Because the one where they become the Purple and the Orange Ranger years before any of those colors actually showed up as proper Power Rangers. They were actually Power Rangers, and then Zordon and Alpha mind whammy them so they forget. And I was like, you bastards. And Bulk and Skull in the series, they've actually had a lot of development. They have a mini. I forget if it was in the regular on Go-Go where Bulk and Skull actually get girlfriends.
And then I think it's in the original run, because I remember at one point. No, it's in Go-Go, I'm pretty sure, where Skull gets a date with Kimberly, and he says, you know what, man, I'm cool, but I don't think we should do this. You're not over your boyfriend. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Sorry, you go, Mike.
And Kim seems really surprised that Skull, who's been going after her for however long, is mature enough to realize he's not going to be the rebound. Yeah. And she really respects him for it. If anything, the series really develops the relationships between the characters, because let's face it, 1993 Mighty Morphin was not the greatest in terms of character development overall. It was meant to be taken in a serial or in an episodic format. You could just drop it and drop out whenever you wanted to. Whereas with these comics,
arguably Bulk and Skull are the only ones that actually get a proper development of their characters over the course of 6 years? something like that.
Yeah,
because they carried forward into Zeo, Turbo, and then in space.
Yep.
Lost Galaxy.
Lost Galaxy. They basically become the heroes of the entire show. It shows them from being like just losers, and then they end up becoming like responsible adults.
Although it was actually only Bulk and Professor Phenomenus in Lost Galaxy because Skull overslept and missed the space station taking off.
Yeah, and then they eventually they both have
they cram them
together
in the Samurai.
Yeah, which is cool.
And I mean, again, Skull didn't show up until like the last episode. Although the kid they got to play Spike, his son, is like, are you sure you're not Jason Narvy's own flesh and blood?
Yeah, so he looks suspiciously like him. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and before we get into our series review here, were kind of my initial thoughts. Pardon me. So I can't even remember how I got into this. I remember I was watching Power Rangers RPM because I had just moved to Guelph. And I'd asked on Twitter.
I actually remember how you got into it.
Okay.
You had wanted to get back into comics. I remember you, and you have your friend that owns a comic store, and I believe it was suggested to you, it might be wrong, that you would like the new WWE comic book done by Boom. And I think either you got that first and saw an ad for Go-Go Power or for Power Rangers, or you got both because they were both starting their runs around the same time.
I'm not 100% sure because I know I got the Boom WWE stuff later.
I'm wondering if it was chicken or the egg, one or the other advertised one or the other, and you got it, and then you're like, I'm hooked.
Yeah, because like the big hook for me was the idea of Shattered Grid. Plus, when I saw the Lord Draken design, I was immediately in love with it. Like the red visor, the updated dragon shield, like the black dragon power coin, which I really want to buy for my morpher, but I also don't know if I feel like paying $60 for a coin. Probably not.
You can just see if somebody, like, it doesn't have to be the official one. See if somebody's.
Oh no, there is no such thing. You have to go to Etsy and you buy them from a company called Starlight Props.
No, I was going to say you might be able to get somebody to make one using like a 3D printer for like $20.
No, they all run about $60. Believe me, I've looked.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, kind of getting into it, I read the first few issues of Shattered Grid. Then I'm like, all right, fine, fuck it. So it turns out at the time, Boom Studios had their own comic app, and they had a huge sale on back issues. So I went back and bought all the trades for all the comics that I didn't have. So I read. Actually, I'm looking at my device right now. So for the comics, I went back and bought through their trades. I bought volumes 1 through 6, and then I had to buy the individual issues that I was missing, which was like 21 through 24. And then I started buying Shattered Grid as it came out month to month. And then I bought Go-Go Power Rangers. I just bought the first trade, which was 1 through 5. And then I started buying the issues individually because they hadn't been compiled into a trade yet. And I fell in love with the series. I thought the writing was fantastic. Some events that happen in the show are considered canon, like JT mentioned, Green with like Evil is canon. Like Go-Go Power Rangers takes place before Tommy's on the team, so it's more interpersonal relationships with the core 5, whereas Mighty Morphin is the main 5 plus Tommy's now the leader of the team, more or less. And I found there was just a lot to like here because they do make Draken a respectable big bad. They do kind of give us that fan servicey question: what if Tommy Oliver had stayed evil? Would he have become this? Would he have killed Rita and all this shit? So I was really, really, really thrilled. Like, I think Kyle Higgins as a writer is fantastic. I'm really curious to check out his other stuff. I know he's worked on like Nightwing and some other books. I know Blanchard's talked about him a number of times and said he was really good, so I'm really curious. Plus the artist, I looked him up last night, and he's been doing some pretty consistent work for Power Rangers that I've seen. Although between the two books, it depends on it. I guess it depends. I found Go-Go sometimes will have really, really fantastic artwork. I think Mighty Morphin gets the better covers, but that's a side point, neither here nor there. Shattered Grid does give me a lot of the fan service that I want. Specifically, this is going to sound really weird, but I love bad guys, and I love bad guys troops. And what I mean by that, like your stormtroopers, your mobile suits from Gundam that are on the bad guy teams, like Zaku's or Leo's or whatever. I love the look of the Draken Sentries, the Mastodon with their huge Power Axe assault cannons, the Saber-Tooth Tigers with their little SMG handguns. And then we get the Blue Ranger Samurais with their Baraka blades. You get the in-space ones that are flying. There were some other sentries I couldn't identify, but it's pretty fucking cool to seeing all these different toys. Like, I wish a company like Figma would come out and make Boom Studios toys, or now that Hasbro has the license and they're making Boom Studios toys. Like, I have the Lord Draken Lightning Collection figure, and he's really well done. The Ranger Slayer supposedly comes out in June.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, like I love the look of these figures. They are fantastic. Boom Studios has given us such wonderful art design from these worlds, and I like how they look enough like their characters from the TV show. Like Austin St. John looks like, that's Jason. Billy looks like that person. Thuy Trang looks like Trini. Help me out. Who's the girl who plays Kimberly again? I can't remember her name.
Amy Jo Johnson.
Amy Jo Johnson looks like Kim. Like they look how they should look, and they do take enough artistic license, especially when they bring in Jen from Time Force. I was like, oh, I can't remember the actress's name right now, but that's fucking Jen Scott. And even the mechanical designs, they look like they should. Like, I'm really impressed to see all these different Megazords, especially as they lead into one of the final battles. And I think it's like issue 29 or 30, or leading into Shattered Grid 1. They look like they should. And when they develop the new Hyper Megazord made from like a million different combinations, it looks cool. That's another thing too. This book canonized the Hyperforce Rangers. The Hyperforce Rangers were originally a Twitch stream, which a friend of the show, Andre the Black Nerd, who plays, I think, Hyperforce Blue, was canonized. And they also put
Aaron Cahill is Jen Scott's, who's on that stream as well.
Yeah, and they had Paul Schreier, was it? The guy that plays Bulk. He's in one of the panels explaining his like hammer weapon to one of the Ninja Storm people. So it's cool to see the little bits of fan service you were getting in Shattered Grid.
Yeah, and also Peter Sidarso, who plays the Red Ranger in Hyperforce on the stream, is Ninja Steel Blue, and he's the younger brother of Dino Charge Blue, Yoshi Sidarso, who's I started following him before Dino Charge on his Instagram, because the dude he's our people. Like, he's a huge cosplayer. He's just kind of a dork.
Wasn't one of the other Sidaro brothers also on Ninja Steel as their Blue Ranger? Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, Peter Sidarso, who played Hyperforce Red, is Preston Ninja Steel Blue.
Okay.
Honestly, that series had probably my least favorite bullies of the series, like Victor and Monty. Like, dear God, Bulk and Skull would look down on you guys. But like you're saying, the crossover is so fun because they have that fan service, Mike. Like you said, they bring in the Hyperforce Megazord, which I've been watching those episodes on YouTube. I haven't quite gotten to the Megazord yet, but I love how they just tack on like all the other Zords that were on the final assault to Draken's base on the moon, and just they become like the ultra Zord.
Yeah, like Shattered Grid did a lot of moments of fan service right. And if one of the things I like, and this is going to sound really weird, and it's not meant to sound as sadistic as it's going to, Shattered Grid introduced real violence into the Power Rangers universe. And I'm not saying, and I'm not discounting what happened in the world of the Coinless as not being a world without violence. As you saw, Draken beat the shit out of Jason and killed him. Trying to think who else is dead in that reality, because Zack dies during the course of Shattered Grid. Trini's still alive.
Coinless Zack, like in Draken's dimension, that Zack ended up dying.
Yeah, that Zack ended up dying. I want to say somebody else died from the main crew, but
Billy. Billy.
Yeah, Coinless Billy is implied to have died.
Coinless Billy. And I was thinking in the very first issue, like Mighty Morphin 25, the whole crossover is basically Power Rangers' version of Crisis on Infinite Earths mixed with a bunch of Zero Hour. Like, the way the temporal mechanics work is very much DC inspired.
But I mean, I'm actually glad I reread this before the show, because I was a little confused on how their time travel worked, and I don't know, it makes more sense once you read it twice, because like certain events can only happen but once they've passed, they're locked in place. So Jen Scott as Time Force Pink explains the rules of time travel to them, and then Billy's like, oh, by the way, this probably works too, right? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, oh.
It's very, to me, as somebody who's not super versed in every DC comic or other comics out there, to me, this is very much like the Flash TV show, where it's got they're trying to enter the morphing grid, or essentially the Speed Force, and they're messing up and creating multiple timelines, or it just seems very similar to what they've done on the CW shows.
Yeah, well, there's in Mighty Morphin 26, just before they go off to I should mention, when you speak about time, they've firmly set the comic in the modern day. Like, the Rangers all have smartphones, and it's very much set text messaging. It's very much set in the now, and it's implied that they are the first, and then stuff like Turbo and Ninja Storm and Megaforce. Oh God, I hated that series. I'm sorry, I watched the original Go Kaiger, and that is nothing but a pale imitation. But in, like I said, Mighty Morphin 26, they're about to go and rescue Samurai Red Lauren, who's the second Red Ranger they had in that series. And you see a timeline projected in the command center, and it's a very linear progression of the Ranger teams from Mighty Morphin on down to I think it's what was after Megaforce.
Ninja Steel?
Ninja Steel, or it was Dino Charge and then Ninja Steel. And they even have the RPM Rangers in there, and it's been firmly established in the show that the RPM Rangers is an alternate timeline. And then you see they're talking about how what Draken's doing is futzed with the timeline, and now it's like this literally a pane of shattered glass, looking more like an actual map of like aligned countries sort of thing.
Yeah,
and I love how they messed with the timeline like that, because before this, RPM was about the only outlier, but now everything's happening all at once, and that's just further destabilizing the Morphin grid.
Yeah, and they actually give a in-universe explanation for it. They say each Ranger team's dimension has splintered off into its own pocket dimension to protect itself from further damage. So Jen's Time Force technology crossed with what's left of the Black Dragon Zord from, I think, Mighty Morphin 9 or 10 or something. They use with Trini and Billy, and they can cross dimensions with it. They just can't go back in time. So if they need to go to Jungle Fury or Mystic Force, they can do that. But they can't go back to the beginning of their own timeline and stop Draken from killing Tommy in that alley in, say, in issue 25. To go back to the violence that I was talking about, seeing Draken drive a headless Saba through the back of himself was, wow, okay, that's pretty violent.
Dark AF.
If you look in the 2000s,
I was laughing at some of the deaths in there. I'm like, oh, just because of the way they were written, and it's just like, he's not breathing. Well, no shit.
Yeah, there's a giant hole in his back.
Yeah, no shit. It's like, he's not breathing. What do I do? And I'm sitting there laughing like that is sort of what a teenager would be like. What do I do? Nothing. That motherfucker's dead.
Well, I mean, he's talking about the violence. Like Tommy killing himself. And I love how they draw Draken to look like how they did Jason David Frank in that little promo trailer thing where they draw him like as old as Jason David Frank is now, with like the black venom veins on his cheeks and the streaky, greasy looking hair and all that. But I mean, even before that, like when I think it's in 24, when we should mention, like, previous to this, after they defeat Draken, they go back to the Prime reality. Draken gets sucked back alongside them because of how their powers are kind of connected at that point. And he's captured by these mysterious soldiers. Turns out there is this woman named Grace Sterling, who's this tech billionaire, and she's a former Ranger from 1969 who was, she was deputized as a Ranger by Zordon for like one mission, and she's kind of held a grudge against, the Blue Sage of Eltar ever since. And so she captured Draken, and when he escapes, they've run into like the Saba from his dimension, and he just like straight up decapitates Saba. And we're talking like the friendly talking flying saber. He just like straight, nuts to you, rips his head off, and then goes home.
Well, first he's like, "What have you come here to gloat?" And he's like, Saba's like, "No, eye lasers kill you."
Yeah,
and
you dead, motherfucker.
And he's just like, "You missed," and then he just rips his head off.
Yeah, it's just like, and I was like, "Oh God, no one is safe." And later, sorry, you go, Mike.
Later on in the 2018 annual, it's a Power Rangers Zeo story, which is a team that hasn't been touched but will have to happen because after Mighty Morphin comes Zeo. Although I guess there's the Ninjetti powers, but
and like, NPR. You know what? I almost feel like with all these remakes going around, it's impossible to do, obviously, in TV format. Simply because the footage has aged too badly, and they'd have to film new stuff. And we all know Saban will never pay for new things anymore. Or if it's too difficult, they just skip a show entirely, which is why we're never, ever, ever going to get Q Ranger here.
It sucks. That show is awesome.
Zodiac Space Rangers stopping, Galactic Empire. Yeah, we're never going to get that because that would require them to hire 12 or 13 regular stars of the show, and they would never pay them more than $50 an episode.
Yeah, because I think the next series they're doing is Resoldier, which is the
dinosaur themed one.
Yeah, dinosaur themed knights with like the little key doodads that activate their powers.
Yeah, and I think they're going to do the train one after that. They're skipping.
Oh God, I hope not.
Yeah, they've already
with the giant steam powered Robopene.
Yes, I believe they're skipping the two. Well, they've skipped 3 so far.
Yeah.
They skipped the Angel one because they're never going to show ones about heaven and hell.
No, technically they did that with Super Megaforce.
Well, sort
of. Or sorry, Megaforce and then Super Mega.
Yeah,
but they never used the whole Angel storyline because somebody would object.
They skipped Q Ranger, and I got a feeling they're going to skip the other really, really good one, which is the Robbers versus Cops one. Lupin Ranger versus.
Well, what was the because I watched like 4 episodes of it's the animal themed one, but they're all like kids learning, like the block ones, the cube animals.
For a second, I thought you were going to say the kids learning disability Power Rangers.
God,
what are you talking about?
I can't remember. Matt, like Bolt Matrix, like I love watching his videos, and he did the whole series of toys from that one where it's all cube themed animals.
Oh God, yeah. Let me give me a second. I'll pull it up because we all know, like, if you were going to make a show that would appeal to all ages, it would be Q Ranger, or the zaniness, craziness. Now that I think the cop versus robbers one was last year's show, maybe it's the year before.
No, it was the year before Resoldier, and then the current one is Kira Major with sparkly magic stones.
Okay, yeah. 2017, 2018 was Q Ranger, which we all know. Birdman, you love that, right?
I thought that show was great. I got 3/4 of the way through that series.
Yeah, Pat Ranger versus Lupin Ranger. That's the one that came after. That's the one. Follows 2 distinct Sentai teams at the same time.
Yeah, I love that series, but it would be too difficult to translate in a coherent way.
They could do it. It's just it would require the same writers that they had in the first 6 years of Power Rangers, which they don't have anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, the next one, 2019 to 2020, was Ryu Soger. Last year it was produced. It's being adapted into season 28.
Yeah.
That one is the. I'm pretty sure that's the one. Yeah. 65 million years ago, Knights return, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's the dinosaur one. Dinosaur druids, weird things. Which is kind of sad that they always do the same ones. And the newest one looks like crap.
Yeah, the Kira Major one, it's been fun, but given that, it's only 4 or 5 episodes in, and then, like I said before, thank you, COVID.
It's insufferable. I tried watching it, but it would be interesting. I would have liked to tie this sort of into what we were talking about. I looked at some of the panels, and there were parts where they pulled in other Rangers from the galaxy, whoever could show up. I was looking really hard to see if they would have done a nod to shows that we didn't get here. Which we didn't get. Whereas with the what was it, the 25th anniversary show, or which one was it? Super Megaforce had that or something?
No.
Megaforce and Ninja Steel they both had anniversary episodes.
Okay, the anniversary. Yes. One of the anniversary episodes, because they used footage from the last 40 years of Sentai in the original, they did have Rangers show up that you'd never seen before in it, and it was the Rangers from the 70s and some of the early 80s, and there was an homage. I was hoping they would do it in this one, but they didn't, because remember there was a series that was being adapted by Saban. They even filmed a pilot for it in the 80s.
Bioman, yeah.
And it had Mark Dacascos as the Red Ranger.
Yeah, and it was filmed in English. They did a full pilot, I believe, and then they did promos for an episode or two, and it didn't air.
Yeah, and I can never pronounce his name right, but the guy who played DJ in the Raul Julia Street Fighter movie was the Black Ranger.
Yeah, that's right. I forget his name too, but yeah. So I've seen little homages here and there in different fan projects and stuff before. I was hoping to see something like that put in there, or there was that other series that was shown in the 80s that was dubbed. It's the only one. Was it Jet? Power Rangers Jet or Sentai something. Or there was a series where it had one whole season that was completely dubbed by Saban. And it's completely forgotten and pushed under the rug.
I vaguely remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, they didn't even do any cuts, so people dying and everything.
Oh yeah, and they did purposely bad dubbing and all that.
Yeah, it was purposely bad dubbing, but the idea was he dubbed the whole thing to show to investors to produce Bioman. And then it didn't go.
Yeah.
And then he had to wait 6 years.
And we should mention, since we've gone this far back in the timeline, we have to thank our Generalissimo Stan Lee for Megazords. Because it was due to a deal he had with Toei in the 70s that they got the Shogun Warriors comic book and the Godzilla comic book in Marvel. And then they did the live-action Spider-Man Super Sentai Spider-Man series, where he's the emissary from hell, and he got a giant transforming spaceship. Spider-Man gave us the Megazord. Boom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's also why one of the early Sentai series, I think it was Battle Fever J, one of the members of the Sentai team, which is translated as Special Task Force or Special Team in English, is designed to look somewhat like Captain America. Because they were going all in on this. We almost got an adaptation as early as, I think, 82, 83 of a series called Sun Vulcan that Stan Lee was going to bring over. They were going to, dub it and broadcast it in America because, he was going pretty hard on this stuff.
Yeah, like it's kind of interesting going into that history, but I was hoping there'd be a little more nods in this comic, which it was clever enough to include some things, but I was hoping just in that one shot where they showed all the Rangers, teleporting in, that we'd have that.
Oh yeah, no, issue 29, you got everything from there's Ninja Steel, Wild Force, Mystic Force. You even get the 6 Rangers from Hyperforce are in there.
Yep.
And right in front, one of my top 3 all-time favorite 6 Rangers, Eric the Quantum Ranger. Dude's badass. Just saying. And I love the next page. You see everyone's looking at it. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is awesome. And Zach's like, we're going to need a bigger room.
Yeah.
He just looks like he's about to shit himself.
Now, for this series, so you've gone over, both of you guys, the basic plot is we have Tommy from alternate timeline, from what I gather, because, again, I didn't get the backstory. Alternate from
he never went back.
Yeah, he never basically became a ranger, a proper ranger, right? And then this is a Tommy from an alternate timeline in the future, 20-ish years, something like that.
The way I read it,
because he's got gray hair.
Yeah, the way I read it is, and the way I kind of look at it is, this is Tommy from 1993, 20 years later. He never became a proper ranger. He assassinated Rita and took over the world.
So it's basically Tommy, like the Black Ranger Tommy from the newer series, if he was just evil.
Yeah, it's basically, as a lot of people.
Like he's in his 40s.
Yeah, like JDF now versus JDF from 1993.
And then he basically decides that he wants to not just rule the world, he wants to reshape it because he had a bad childhood.
I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Ultimately, he wants to reshape it to his childhood, and he figures the only way to do that is to punish everybody, become super powerful. It's like if you mixed Power Rangers with that Jet Li movie, The One, together.
That's actually not a half bad analogy.
Yeah, because obviously he goes through different realities, and whenever he finds a version of himself, he kills that version. The big tangent we went on for the last 10 minutes here, I was mentioning about the violence in the series. In the annual from 2018, Tommy spends time undercover as a hologram with the Power Rangers Zeo team. And he's fighting alongside them, and then that's the last day that Jason's there as the Gold Ranger, and they give him his Dino Buckler. And he's like, it doesn't work anymore, but I fixed it up so it looks nice. And he's like, oh, gee, golly, thanks. Yeah. And then Tommy and Jason are talking on top of the command center, and he's talking about, hey, they really look up to you. They've got a really good leader now. And he's like, why? He's like, because they love you. And he's like, I don't get it, but I'll do my very best. And Jason's like, you'll do fine. Trust me. I left the team in really good hands. So anyway, he teleports away. And then it cuts back to they're having a party still. And then Tommy leaves. Although if you're careful and you catch it, Tommy teleports away, but it's green. He should be red at this time. Oh shit, something's up. So you see another Tommy tied to a chair with some futuristic device, and then Drac reveals bondage gear. Then he reveals himself. Wah! I'm evil. And Zeo Tommy's like, you can't touch me. My friends will find me. And he pulls out Adam's morpher, who's Johnny Young Bosch's character, and he's like, have you killed him? He's like, no, I let him live, but I won't let you live. And he stabs him, and it's, once again, violence I didn't expect from a Power Rangers comic. And then
not overly bloody or anything.
No, but you did see blood.
Because, yeah, you do, but this isn't like overly graphic. It's
enough to get the message across.
Tastefully done, but enough that small children probably wouldn't be allowed to look at it.
Yeah, it's enough because you see the big red streak and it says splosh or whatever.
It's not even, I wouldn't say it's enough for like teen, but it's like you wouldn't want necessarily somebody under 8 or 9 years old to be reading this.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. And then there's another part, even though I found it through my reread that he was left alive, and I disagree with it. Draken invades the in-space Megazord. I can't remember what it's called. But they blow TJ, which is is he the Blue Ranger? Yeah, Blue Ranger. They blow him out of an airlock in just his civvies and an air mask. And I noticed on his outfit, there's frost, which means he should be dead.
Well, it just, like, if you notice on there, it shoots him out there and it says to be continued in another issue, which I don't know. It wasn't part of what I had. So I don't know if they've come back to
mentioned.
No, it's one of the Mighty Morphin issues. You see, I think it's Kelsey, the late speed yellow, doing push-ups, and then TJ's in the cell across from her in Draken's taking over Rita's moon base.
Yeah.
So he did survive, although at the same time it's and not that I'm not a bad man. I'm not. It's just if TJ died, I wouldn't be sad.
Same here, because I didn't much care for him in Turbo, but the point I was like, I was hoping they would have killed TJ because that shows balls. And that's something that I liked about Shattered Grid. It wasn't pulling many punches because it was pretty clear that some of these Ranger worlds that get taken over, Draken's not taking prisoners. I mean, if he's killing versions of Tommy Oliver, if you get in his way, he'll kill you. I mean, even during the final battle,
he kills his own friends.
He kills his own friends. He kills Jason. He snaps Finster Five's neck. He kills Skull.
Which, by the way, best thing about the entire comic.
That's a really cool mashup.
What was not just that, but showing that what it shows is that Finster was actually a lot smarter than he ever let on.
Well, that's something the books have done as well. Finster is a wonderfully fleshed out character.
Yeah, he you can see like he always came across as sort of like the bumbling old man fool for Rita. But that's literally
you want to hug him.
But that's literally a cover because he's like, if she knows how smart I am, she'll kill me.
Yeah.
Well, plus he's also this mad artist too, which is another angle.
Yeah. So like he's like he's a mad scientist, obviously, but at the same time, he's actually more empathetic than any of the other henchmen. But he realizes if he shows his true nature, she'll cast him out or kill him. So when he's technically freed from her in that timeline, he joins Tommy of his own free will and becomes like literally like an adopted father.
He becomes the Alfred to his Batman. And that's one of the best things they did with the series overall with their side villains. Like when you first meet Finster, and I forget the artist they had in that first run, but Finster is frightening. And he looks like this, he's got like that weird kind of bearded look to him, but when that artist draws him, it just looks like he's got a face full of giant teeth. And you're right, he's frightening. There's even a storyline that's where Rita, I think it's in one of the annuals preceding the one that's involved with the crossover, where Rita recruits him, and he's only doing it to, like, he's an artist, he's a mad artist, he wants to create art, and then his wife dies, and part of the reason he's still with Rita is he's trying to find a way to create like one of these monsters that he molds out of magic clay to like bring his wife. Yeah, which is both scary and kind of
heartbreaking.
Exactly, because it's like I said in the show, I I love me some Squat. Squat's my boy, because that's what I was as a kid. I was big, I was dumb, and I didn't think before I spoke. And I very rarely do that now. But I never liked Babu. But they also gave an incredible amount of development to Goldar, and he goes from being this, I will crush you, Power Rangers, and he's like this very prideful warrior who, you know, he swore an oath of faith to Rita, and he's not just an ass.
Well, yeah, because like in the comics with like Goldar, he fought alongside his brother. Lord Zed killed his brother, and he's like, I'll swear fealty to you only so I can get my shot at you, or something like that. Or so there's more glorious battles ahead.
It shows, from what I read, he was working as a spy for Lord Zed under false pretenses, where he was, Lord Zed's like, keep an eye on Rita, she's backstabbing, blah, 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 blah. And then Rita knows that he's been spying on her, says, gives him one chance, you have a chance to join with me or basically leave. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, shut up. By the way, you're working for Lord Zed. He's the one that killed your brother for questioning him. And then he's like, a what? So then he's like, he does the whole blood fealty thing, cuts his hand, and he's like, I will join you, blah, 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 forever, blah, blah, blah. And he's less of a moron.
Yeah, like there's been some wonderful depth given to these characters. I mean, one of the other characters I like is I think it's Babu, how he's like a disposed ruler, but he's treated as an idiot, but he's actually remarkably smart. And he's just been waiting this entire time for Rita to make a mistake.
It seems like that's how all the henchmen are. Like, they're actually not quite as stupid as... See, they play stupid because they realize that Rita isn't as
question her as death.
Rita isn't as smart as she thinks she is. Everybody plays up to that because they also know that she has a hair trigger temper.
Yeah. Well, except for Babu. I mean, the guy's a straight up idiot. But yeah. Babu, sorry, I meant Squat. Babu comes off as the Power Rangers equivalent of the six-fingered man from Princess Bride. Like, just this, like, sycophant, conniving sort of dude. And I love one of the dark, you talk about violence and just dark moments in the lead up to Shattered Grid and Go-Go Power Rangers. You see the buildup of Rita preparing to create the Green Ranger, before she like brainwashes Tommy, and she's got to re-energize the Dragon Power Coin.
Oh, and she kills all those people.
She kills all those people, and then she resurrects her mother's spirit and traps her mother's ghost in the Power Coin to repower it. That's fucking dark.
Oh yeah. One other comic that really got to me, and then we'll get back to talking about Shattered Grid. Yeah. It was a Go-Go Power Rangers issue, and it focuses on how Rita got trapped in the space dumpster. And it says, you will be forced to relive the life of every person you've ever taken.
And teach her empathy.
And teach her empathy. And says this will happen to you 10,000 times. Do you wish to begin? And she relives her own life and how she had a son and a daughter, and how she has to have that ripped away from her, and how Rita's real name is, I think, Neosha or something like that. The artwork in that book was incredible. I actually I think the artist or the writer, I think it was Ryan Perot, I think his name was. Ryan something, either way. I wrote to him on Twitter saying, dude, this issue really got to me. Like this, I feel this in my soul. And as much as Shattered Grid was a wonderful bit of fan service to the community, which has been supporting it for 25 plus years, this issue really, really, really got to me on an emotional level. There's even one panel in Shattered Grid number 1, where they've defeated Draken. They have the heart of the Morphin Master. The emissaries are explaining to them, look, you can put back reality as it once was, but if you do, everything gets reset. And the Rangers are like, that means Draken too. And they're kind of like, oh shit. And then Jen pipes in, just because you put it back to the way it was doesn't mean it'll be the exact same. And then the Rangers say, look, we're not just saving the world, we're saving all of them. And Kim and Tommy have a couple panels together, and Kim says something along the lines of, Tommy, there's so much I want to say, and there's just not time. And Tommy just says, yeah. And in one panel, they kiss, and you can see tears coming down Kim's face. And it's just that panel and just that couple lines of dialogue. Because if you've been with the books for as long as we have at this point, for me, this would have been 32, 35 books, not including the Go-Go Power Ranger stuff. Whatever it was, almost 40 books. You've grown attached to these characters, plus you have the memories of the TV show, so you kind of have these images in mind. It really struck a chord, and then the book ends, leaving the new reality to be formed, which essentially doesn't start until Necessary Evil, which starts issue 40. What happens between issue 30 and issue 39 is something called Beyond the Grid, which I was not a huge fan of. Though it does introduce the Solar Ranger, which is really cool looking, and the Solar Megazord. But I didn't much care for this ragtag band of survivors from Shattered Grid, because some of the fallout from Shattered Grid is Terra Venture or Promethea or whatever the fuck it is. The giant spaceship is out of time, and it gets exiled to a reality where there is no morphing grid. There's no morphing grid energy. But it turns out
disconnected from the grid, I think.
Yeah, it's been disconnected from the grid, but they do find morphing energy there, because they find some girl there who has the ability to morph, but there's these creatures that are looking for it, and it's weird. But they also have Andros, who's the red in-space ranger, Heckle, who is always alluded to be the Dark Ranger from Dino Charge, which I loved his individual issue in Beyond the Grid. I will give him that. Even though I've never seen Dino Charge, I've only seen like Linkara's review of Dino Charge, and it seemed really interesting with him.
It honestly, of all the series, because you go original Saban, the Disney era, and then the Neo Saban, which is, includes Dino Charge. I recommend Samurai's a tough get through, but it is ultimately a lot of fun. Do not watch Megaforce. For the love of God, do not watch Megaforce.
I like parts of Megaforce.
I'm sorry. That Red Ranger, I've seen better acting in a high school play.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I cannot recommend Megaforce, but Dino Charge. Gia. Yeah, who didn't like Gia? And that's
and Mike.
Yeah, well, Gia's. I love her.
Getting Australian actors.
Well, they still shoot the show in New Zealand, don't they?
Yeah. See, they do it because they don't have to get visas for anybody. But it's, I don't know, the quality of actors that they've been getting since they started shooting Down Under. Oof, and I thought it was bad. Like, some of the American actors were pretty bad over all the years.
Yeah.
But there's something about, especially when it's an Aussie or a New Zealander trying to do an American accent, it just brings whatever performance they have down worse.
Yeah, which is why I love, Dino Charge is the one, as much as I was wavering in my devotion to the Morphin Grid after Samurai, and I almost straight up, I would have watched Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills than watch Megaforce. Dino Charge totally reinvigorated my love. It's not perfect, but it is so much better than anything we've had the last few years. And I love the fact that the Black Ranger is a Kiwi. He is a New Zealander. And I just moved to America and I work in this dinosaur museum. And
see, perfect. That's how you do it. Because then they don't have to contend with already being a young actor trying to break out and trying to do an accent perfectly. Just be natural.
Yeah. But yeah, so as Mike was saying, some of the more emotional beats is when you have to relive Tommy's death over again in the Shattered Grid one shot. But then you understand, like I said, now Go-Go Power Rangers 12 is the only issue from that series that ties in any meaningful way to the crossover. And throughout the crossover, we've met this character called the Ranger Slayer, who's the older Kimberly from Draken's dimension. She basically became his version of the Green Ranger, except she's pink because he, mesmerized her with like this magic bow that made her evil, and then they smashed it and she was good again. And he shoots Tommy in the past just prior to him. I think it's either just before he became the Green Ranger or just after he broke the brainwashing, but he shoots him with this arrow. It's got a piece of the green chaos crystal. It's just this MacGuffin that's kind of weaved its way in and out through a bunch of the storylines thus far. And when he dies, because he had that chaos energy in him, his soul is separated from his body, and he's essentially pulled into the morphing grid itself. So when Draken takes over reality and reboots it, and he's like, Super Draken, dun 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 dun, he's like saving Angel Grove from stately Tommy Oliver Manor. Like, dear God, they wanted to make him Batman so bad in that. But Tommy wakes up, the core Rangers, and he introduced the emissaries. Like, what did you think of the designs on that, guys? Because I love how the emissaries, these guys are one step removed from being, they're demigods to the Morphin Master, who are gods, and they're constantly, like, the energy's crackling across them. They look like two different Rangers at once. I
thought
love
that was
image.
That's such a cool visual design, and it's always neat to figure what are they like. There's Dino Thunder, there's Lost Galaxy, there's Lightspeed Rescue, there's Mystic Force.
It sounds like to me, like it's probably not, but it sounds like to become one of them, you have to have been a sage essentially, and then attained a great level. It's interesting that there's only 3. Because some Ranger shows there's 3 Rangers, some Ranger shows there's 5 or 6. But what I thought would have been interesting, a little bit even more interesting, would be, because they can do whatever they want with this, create their own designs. What if they had a different look even altogether, or like if they had looked like more medieval in their costumes, like it had been like, oh, these are just like literally ancient Rangers that have ascended.
I like the idea that they're ancient Rangers that have ascended. It's like Rangers, Sage, like Zordon, and then emissaries. Although I don't disagree with you having them. I think that would make them look cool to look like ancient Rangers.
Or like if they had designed them to look like the Rangers from the first Sentai show. If they had, like, the first couple.
I don't know. Have you ever seen the designs of those first Rangers there, Alex?
Well, no, you could still
kind of rough.
You could revamp, or have them phase between the Rangers that we never got.
That would have made a more interesting choice.
The ones through the late 70s and early 80s, have it so that when they flip between them, have them flip where it's like they'll look like a Ranger, half of a Ranger that we know and half of a Ranger we've never seen. So the idea is they phase through Rangers from the entire multiverse.
Yeah, that actually would be much better, because I was just going to say, it's not that I don't disagree with you that ancient Rangers would look awesome. I think because of the idea of the morphing grid, and you can channel it in so many different ways, that's what's brilliant about having the emissaries flicker between 2 different Rangers or 3 Rangers in some shots.
Like
it limits them somehow.
Like they look like whatever Rangers we know in our reality, because we perceive them based on the Rangers that we have, sort of thing.
Yeah,
like they're the spectrum of light that we see them in resonates with the the quantum signature of our galaxy, sort of deal. So if this was another galaxy talking to them, they would look different, sort of deal. I would have liked that. I like the idea that they're sort of the go-between. They're sort of keepers of the grid. Cool idea. It's the kind of thing they would never do in the show because it would require money.
It's way too high concept for a children's program.
It is something that I could see them again doing. If Saban was ever to license it, it would be interesting to get. I'm trying to think who do they have? Are they still with Lionsgate? I think for the theatrical and all the new stuff, they are.
Well, whatever the licensing deal is, I think it's like the production company that helps out with that. Hasbro has their own production thing, because you always see that in front of the Transformer movies and the G.I. Joe movies.
Yeah, it would have been interesting if they could get Paramount or somebody on board to help fund, some animated content, because all these movie studios are starting their own streaming networks, right? It would be a good idea to have, a couple 1-hour specials, and they could adapt the comics very easily. Similar, hell, even, I don't know if they worked out a deal, handed over to the team that does all the Warner stuff.
Well, there's been talk of Netflix stuff for a while. In fact, I think it was Kyle Higgins about a week ago said there was talks happening at Netflix as early as, well, the thing is, it fell apart.
Well, I was going to say, they could still come back, but I guarantee you who they would have been in negotiations with, it would have been with the DreamWorks team that works exclusively with them. Because that's the same teams that did the Voltron stuff. If they did that, if it was that team...
Oh, God. Sorry, did I make that noise out loud? It's just like, oh, yeah.
I was going to say, because that Voltron show was really damn good. If they got that
magical,
if they got that team together to work on, a few shorts or a few specials, I could see it doing quite well. Yeah, it's just a matter of money. And, while I do agree it's better that Saban, got the rights back from Disney, because Disney was destroying the franchise completely. The worst
I would argue Disney got some of the best shows that we got, though. We got Dino Thunder, we got RPM, SBD.
As it went on, it got worse and worse and worse.
Honestly, I think a lot of people, because the first full-on Disney series was, what's the one that came after Wildstorm? I think that was Wild Force and then Ninja Storm. No, Wild Force holds this weird placekeeper place in Power Rangers history, because it's half Saban and half Disney. Halfway through that series was when Haim Saban sold it to Disney. And
because he wanted to make movies, and that didn't really do well.
Yeah, and honestly, I know me personally, and a lot of fans I've talked to over the years have something of a hatred for Wild Force.
I love the Morphers from Wild
Force. I hated, I don't know if it's a Disney one, but I hated the Mystic Force theme song.
You know what? We're lucky we got that one, because I was following Ron Wasserman, the Go Power Rangers.
Yeah, I heard his version. I actually liked it better.
There's like 4 versions for Mystic Force alone, and we're lucky we got the one we did. That one is the most tolerable. The Disney era, there's a lot of good stuff. It's not, I don't want to say a lot of bad, but there's a lot of stuff that,
it's where the corners really started getting cut. And I feel like when Saban came back to it, he continued on that trend.
Yeah, Kalish explosions. Although I wouldn't say so much in the Nia Saban era, when I put a lot of blame on Nickelodeon. Because you remember, like, the first season of Power Rangers was like 60 episodes long, and then we got like the Thunderzord era, and that was like 30 some episodes. And like the Power Rangers series used to have as many episodes as the original Sentai series, but about the time that they got sold to Nickelodeon and the Neo Saban era began, they get locked into the Nickelodeon mentality of every season has 20 episodes. Every season has 20 episodes. And then every second season gets this dumbass super added to the title. So, Super Samurai.
So they can fix their budgets over the course of multiple years. What would make more sense, because they don't do the weekday show, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday stuff. It's all Saturday morning shows now or whatever.
You'll get like 5 episodes over the course of a month, and then
it would almost be better if, instead of stretching it the way they do, maintaining the same budget that they have. Like, they'll budget an entire show for the 40 episodes or 44 or whatever it turns out to be. I think most Sentai are 39 episodes nowadays, and then they usually have like a movie.
Yeah, 39, 40 some episodes, and the movies don't always tie into continuity.
It would almost be better if they did sort of what they used to do, which was take the best episodes, make those, take the budget that you have for the 40 episodes, and then make a good 26 episodes out of it. Take that budget. So basically every episode would have 1.5 times the budget it currently has. You could then take time to stretch it out. If you wanted to, you could film extra scenes so that people slow down the pacing a little bit, because the newer shows I've noticed in the last 10, 15 years have gotten, there was always a pretty fast paced show, but it's gotten to the point where nothing has time to sit anymore. There's literally, it's like scene, over, and nothing has any real time to have an impact on you. So I feel like if they were able to stretch out or do some multi-episode storylines, throw those characters in, build it up, they could do it in such a way that it would make for binge-worthy TV for the kids. Instead of just like the method that they're using is the old school, everybody has to wake up Saturday morning to watch a cartoon way of doing shows. And that's not what kids are watching anymore. That's not how kids consume things. They watch things on an app. And you really want to get kids to watch more, have, multi-episode arcs. They're growing up used to that sort of style of storytelling now. And it's stuff that they did in the first 5-6 years of the show. And they just aren't doing anymore.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't put enough thought into these things. I've always loved Power Rangers. It's the simplicity of these multicolored superheroes from Japan with their giant transforming robots. Yeah. And I can trace my love for that thing all the way back to Voltron. That super force of space explorers and the defender of the universe. Like there is a dare I say a truth? There is a simple truth. Good over evil. Good guys win, bad guys lose. And,
absolutely.
It's stuff like that. When then you add in business and making money, and I almost want to use the phrase sellout, but I hate that phrase.
Well, the show was a sellout always from the beginning. Like, the problem is, if you notice, the run length of these episodes have gone from 24 minutes or so to 19, and to fit more commercials, but. Honestly, because things go streaming now, if the episodes were that extra 5 minutes made all the difference in pacing, because it was just enough to give it a little bit of a breather, and you could fill it with other things. But how this ties into the comics I felt like this comic was moving at the same pace and speed of these new, these new shows, and to me that was a little bit jarring. It seemed to jump around a fair bit. Overall, I still think it was a fantastic story.
Yeah.
I feel that, some art issues aside, some crowding of text boxes here and there, some inconsistencies with color. It happens sometimes when you're jumping between, franchises or jumping between different artists working on stuff. So, I get that. Overall, it's pretty good. I feel like they're making the cartoon, or not the cartoons, they're making the TV shows for kids, and they're making these specifically, like, even though these are an all ages book or like a pretty much an all ages or a teen series, they're pretty much for people in their 30s and 40s.
Oh yeah, the Power Rangers comics, they're at a really good point where anybody in the fandom, like if you're a new fan, if you want to jump in, if you've only seen early MMPR, that's fine. If you're an older fan like us, it's a great reintroduction to the characters. And Shattered Grid. Yeah, and Shattered Grid was totally meant to be fan service for us. A younger fan who's maybe only known Samurai, Ninja Steel, Super Mega Force, whatever, they'll enjoy it because you do see some of those characters here, but it's primarily aimed at the older audience. And Boom Studios found a way to connect with all audiences across all levels. I'd love to see some of the sales data for these books, because there's only been a few books I've ever bought in physical in the last couple of years, because I stopped collecting physical comic books back in 2016. But when Power Rangers announced Shattered Grid, I bought the Power Rangers book, issue 25. And if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, JT, did it not come black polybagged because they wanted to keep the big surprise? Because I remember one of these books did come black polybagged.
I'm not saying it didn't. I never saw one myself. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've read about that.
Yeah, because that shows the death of Tommy right on the cover, or it's one of I can't remember which one I had, which cover I had. Maybe it was only for the trade paperback that showed Tommy's death, but it was it was Draken holding a shattered helmet, and I think I had the pterodactyl one. But I know one of the issues did come in like a black special polybagged issue. So
yeah, I have I think that was Mighty Morphin 25. I've got, they did, I think, multiple covers on that, like the 6 main Rangers. I've got the Broken Green and Broken Red.
I think green is the more rare one. Mine's pretty common, if I remember right, which Boom, if they've done anything right with the Power Rangers comics, they've brought back the idea of the retailer incentive comics. And to get all the Ranger comics, good fucking luck to you.
Well, now I have a question to you guys, because you guys collect more. Like I fell off the collecting trades and hardcovers a while ago. The last ones being when Valiant came back, I was getting them all those hardcover special editions, because Amazon was you could pre-order like a $65 comic book a hardcover for like $25 if you got the pre-order early enough. So I was getting all those. When you get, I'm assuming there's basic trades of these, but have they put together some of these in hardcovers where you get the different cover variants as extra pages?
Yes.
Something like that, yeah.
Yep, because one of the things, now, here's a side story, and this is by no means a boo-boo against Boom Studios, is I was using their official app for pretty much most of my comic collecting up until recently, and occasionally I would run into some pretty major problems, and eventually my problems were worked out, but as compensation, the Power Rangers people would always offer me free books. So like, hey, Mike, for all the problems you've had, we'd like to offer you some free comics. Pick any 3 titles you want. And I'm like, anything? So I'd pick the most expensive things I could. I got one comic book that was $90, and I was allowed to pick 3 more because they didn't say what I could and couldn't pick. So
Jesus.
Oh yeah, I told Alex this story last year. I got most of my Power Rangers comics I got for free, but I still buy them week to week just so I can support the line. Plus, it's only $5. Who cares? But I have up to volume 7 in the trade because I want those extra covers. The only thing I haven't seen digitally offered, but it doesn't mean it's not. It doesn't mean that it's not out there. Is they have a deluxe hardcover for Shattered Grid that contains an exclusive story that I haven't read, which is really unfortunate. And the thing is, they also do have more references to Shattered Grid post this too. There's one, I think it's in Go-Go. Yeah, it's in Go-Go, where Jason has a memory of fighting Lord Draken's 3rd evolution form when they're in Draken's world, where they're the Omega Rangers now, which kind of ties into the show when Jason, Zach, and Trini left.
Go to the Peace Conference.
Yeah, they were off-world becoming the Omega Rangers, where basically they were the New Galaxy defending Rangers, where they were being led by an emissary himself on behalf of the Morphing Masters to fix parts where the morphing grid was destabilized. People were getting powers where they shouldn't, and they were responsible for putting them down or capturing them.
In space dumpsters.
Yeah, in space dumpsters. And eventually shit goes sideways, but it also introduces how Tommy gets the white lights. Actually, no, that happens in Necessary Evil. So that's in main MMPR.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about the writing overall with the series is how, Mighty Morphin starts, like I said, like a week after Green with Evil, and Go-Go starts like 2 days after the first episode, Day of the Dumpster. And they've slowly been like moving forward basically, I think Go-Go is ending
in like 2 months.
Yeah. Well, whenever that happens.
Yeah. Whenever those books get released. Yeah. I mean, Go-Go is actually my favorite of the 2 books now, surprisingly. And I didn't like Go-Go at first. But as time has went on, I found the writing just to be more solid. Plus, one of my all-time favorite panels, and I just want to talk about this for just a second. There's a point where they go to a different planet, and Jason and Trini's colors get swapped. And Trini's the Red Ranger, Jason's yellow, and they're on top of this cliff, and it's been hinted at in the series that they have an interest in each other, whereas Billy and Trini in the TV show, there was implied chemistry, but they're just implied to be really good friends here. But here, it's more heavily implied that Jason and Trini, there's a mutual attraction, but because they're Power Rangers, they choose not to pursue it. Plus, with everything that's going on right now, it's just not a good time for them to date. But they're like, you know what? We could die tomorrow. So
they kiss.
They kiss. And just that panel was the background on my phone for like 6 months because the artwork to me was just so striking. And it's so weird. I'm not a romantic guy. Like I wouldn't read romance fiction. Although
says the guy that does a whole month of anniversary gifts for his wife every year.
Yeah, that's true. I was about to say,
you liar.
Despite that, yeah, I don't.
Y'all softy.
I don't read romance fiction, but I write it. Don't ask where it is. But let's just say it has gotten me through several doors it shouldn't have over the years.
Hey, I'd be a hypocrite to say that I'm not judging you, Mike. I've wrote 1.5 Power Ranger fan fictions in my day that are still posted on rangerboard.com. Look up Zord Crazy. I've said too much.
There you go. But there are just so many moments in the Boom Studios comics that I've loved about just the relationships. I mean, even seeing Zach struggle with self-doubt after Rita offers him a deal, and yet even when he meets him in World of the Coinless, he's like, do you have any advice for me, or is it maybe best not to know? And just seeing some of the comments between him and his alternate self have, like, there's a lot of heart between the Power Ranger comics. I think the writing has been very consistent, and since the other writer has taken over from Kyle, who I think is off doing something else now, the books have been remarkably solid. Like, other than I didn't much care, like I said, for Beyond the Grid, just because some of these character teams I don't have a lot of connection with. The only character I really knew was the Ranger Slayer. The other ones, like Heckle, I only vaguely knew. I knew about Aisha, or is it Tanya in it? She's the Power Ranger Z Yellow, either way. And then there was Andros, who's red in space. And and Blue Ninja, Blue Samurai or something. I don't know. Either way, there was just some characters I just didn't know, and thus I didn't feel as much a connection to. But overall, Shattered Grid, I'd say, was a wonderful experiment with what can be pulled off with fan fiction. I do wonder what they're going to do as the next big bad, because as the comics have moved forward, Lord Zed has been introduced. They've introduced a new character named Dane, who is he's the same species as Commander Kruger from SPD, except he's red, and he can kick the shit out of Tommy even in his White Ranger form, and like broke his arms and shit, so he's not one to be fucked with. It's brutal, that fight.
Now again, like, I read 15 issues in less than 2 days, so it might be a blur to me, and I might be wrong, but in one of the altered timelines, wasn't one of them dating Bulk? Or was
no, that I think that's in one of the Go-Go issues. You see Bulk and Kimberly, like, they're part of, they're not, I don't know if they're part of the Coinless, but they're not part of Draken's regime.
Well, he's still a big guy, but he's like much more in shape than.
Yeah,
they're close.
He's big. He's strong fat instead of just fat.
Yeah.
And then doesn't future Kimberly go back in time and meet Bulk?
And they're really happy to see each other.
Meet.
She's
Bulk.
happy.
She's introduced as like older sister Sally, and then like hugs him, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
It's like, yeah, bring it in, Magellan, because they have this whole thing about in the future where Bulk's like, what? I like history. And she's like, I never knew that about you. So when she goes back to the juice bar and she's somehow doesn't get brain freeze from sucking back all those smoothies, and then she hugs Bulk, and Bulk's just like, bah,
touched. not necessarily. I didn't mean like dating, but it was funny. It's like, and the look on on like regular like prime timeline. Kimberly's like, "What are you doing? He's the gross fat bully. What are you doing?"
I love this crossover, like, and that's we'll talk about at the end what our next episode is. I love this crossover because it does what I want crossovers to do. Is you bring up an interesting idea. It's more or less, and I don't mean that in any negative way, you more or less nail the execution. It's fun. There are stakes. It's resolved for the most part, and that's what I said earlier when he called this Crisis on Infinite Ranger 0 Hour, because like Crisis on Infinite Earths in DC, like Draken's decimated the multiverse and reconstituted reality in his own image, and then Tommy gets his mojo back and they defeat Draken. And like Mike said earlier, they can choose to fix reality or they can just reset it to what it was before all this, but not everything's going to be put back together exactly. And that's kind of what they did in DC's 0 Hour in the 90s, which was more or less an editorial excuse to, fudge away certain, troubling aspects of characters or, continuity errors that there's no good way to use these things. They just kind of, erase it, which is what I did.
Yeah.
And they even hint that Draken could still be out there somewhere.
Well, that's a way, obviously, to leave it in just in case they want to come back to it or do a whole series on him or something. But the reason I liked why I was thinking of the bulk thing was it plays into that even in that altered timeline or that messed up version, as an adult, he becomes, a good person. And basically it's instead of going off into space and doing whatever, he becomes.
He was a bartender on Terra Venture, if I recall correctly.
You know what I mean? And rallying the troops there as an adult. In this version, he becomes like a freedom fighter, which you'd never think of.
He becomes the not Lando Calrissian of the Ranger Revolution.
Yeah. So they did sort of play into that like, all the younger teens, like in the present day, would have no idea. That's why I like the reaction. It's like, why are you doing that? Why would you hug him? Like, what are you doing? Get away from him.
And even Skull's like, dude, I'm jealous.
Well, and it's like the whole that happens, and you can just picture it's like you don't realize that this dude's going to help save humanity, and you're like, really, that guy?
Yeah, but yeah, overall, I love this crossover. I love Power Rangers. This is literally peanut butter and chocolate for me. And there's so many things like the fan service. I love jam pages like that shot from Mighty Morphin 29 where you see all the Rangers piled up outside the command center, and I was just like,
yeah, like it was fun looking through those things, seeing who you could recognize, seeing the newly canonized Hyperforce Ranger. This is the first time we'd seen Beast Morphers on the page. It was just cool to see everything come together properly.
That's right. This came out before Beast Morphers premiered. I forgot about that.
Yep. So Shattered Grid did so much right. It treated the fandom with the respect it deserved. And this is what got me back into reading comics full time, because I got to realize if a company can treat its crossovers and events like this, maybe there's more hope for the comics industry that I left behind a while ago. Because before this, the only comics I was reading at the time, and even then sparingly, I was collecting the My Little Pony comics. I fell way behind. I stopped collecting like 2015, 16, but I collected everything back then, including the variant covers. And then I collected, basically, if it's based upon a property that I like, I'll read it. So I don't know. I'm hoping Boom Studios continues to carry the torch with this. I'm sad that Go-Go's ending, because one thing to note is Go-Go has now caught up with the current timeline, and MMPR now has the new team involved. Like, you now have Rocky, Aisha, and Adam as the other Rangers.
They haven't quite caught up, because Go-Go is the current storyline in Go-Go is Zach, Trini, and Jason have just gone off with the Blue Emissary to become the Omega Rangers. And that takes place because there's a bit of a time jump after Beyond the Grid into the Necessary Evil storyline. Because Go-Go there just had Tommy acquire the White Light, and in Mighty Morphin, he's been the White Ranger for a few months now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's more or less, again, it's a very nitpicky thing.
Yeah, like, it's worth reading both series. I mean, if you can get the trades when they pop up on sale, it's honestly worth your time to go through both series. Like I said, a few minor nitpicks aside, I think the main reason to pick these books up, I think it's the wonderful way the relationships are written. I mean, sure, some of the action and some of the splash pages are cool when you see them do their morphs or their battles with the Megazord, which the Grave Zord, underappreciated design. If that was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, I'll find a way to pay for it. I don't care. I will buy that.
And to my gripes before about the pace at which how fast this moved, I understand that for this case, this had to be a limited event that they wanted to have done basically within a year. So I get it. You could have almost done Shattered Grid as you could have done 24 issues if you really wanted to flesh it out. But the fact that they were able to tell the whole basic story over, somewhere in the 12 to 15 issue mark was pretty good. I will say this, that for all the issues I had with the speed at which some of the action happened, and maybe that they were filling up too many, voice bubbles because they wanted to cram as much in as they could. I'll say this, that they give more character time than they've done probably ever in the show.
Yeah. You get a vibe for who these characters are, or at least for the main core characters. You may get a line from Kendall from Super Dino Charge, but you're going to get more from Billy and Trini and Jason than you ever did in the main show.
I know we like tabletop gaming, which this Power Rangers would always make a cool tabletop game, but I think this storyline, forget the fighting game that came out, which was, middle of the road.
Battle for the Grid.
Yeah. I almost feel like this would make for a really good
RPG.
Yeah, but not.
There were talks of it.
I'm not talking about super duper high budget or anything, but something along the lines of Marvel Ultimate Alliance. That sort of style of gameplay. You could do a pretty good story that way, or even a side-scrolling beat 'em up that takes you down the path of the story would be really cool. A la the
Super NES games.
Yeah, my favorite was the Game Gear one.
Never played Game Gear. I do remember playing the movie game, but I just remember when I had a Super NES and I got that Power Rangers game the first time Jason morphed, I was just glorious.
Yes. But yeah, I think you could. This would be ideal for that, because you could get an indie studio to do it, on fairly on the cheap if it's 2D, and I think it would sell quite well.
There was a beat 'em up released around the time of the new movie when it came out in 2017. It wasn't very good. The newest Power Rangers game, other than Legacy Wars, which is available on mobile, which isn't terrible, but it is grindy and exploitative, but it's not bad, is Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, which is sort of the fighting game reinterpretation of this. And it arrived in several really weird ways. The first time it came out, the story mode wasn't completed. You only had 8 characters. Now the roster is much more fleshed out. The campaign mode is more or less voiced.
Isn't it very monetized though? You have to buy every little individual thing?
No. If you want to buy more characters, yes, but you do get access to seasons passes for that, and it's not as bad. You're thinking Legacy Wars. Legacy Wars is monetized to shit.
Oh, grindy as hell.
Yeah, Battle for the Grid, it's okay. It's just, I don't think it's a very good fighting game. When the game first was announced and first tested, they tried to get a Street Fighter player and basically esports champ Justin Wong to speak its praises, and he did somewhat. But the problem is, I found with it, is it's too easy to exploit air attacks if you know how to get somebody into an infinite loop.
It's kind of run of the mill, which is probably why it was priced at the $25 price point in the States. I think, was it 30 or 35 here?
It was 30 here. During its launch period, it was $40 with the collector's version of 60.
Ooh, that doesn't sound like it was worth it when it launched.
Well, when you got the season's pass, you did get a lot more stuff in it.
But
like you did get.
So it sounds like they went the Street Fighter route though, where it didn't even have the story mode.
It was not a complete story mode, no, because you got to the end where Rita meets Zordon and Commander Kruger, and they're like, I can help you, and then Zordon's like, and that's the story so far. And I don't know if that's David Fielding as Zordon. It just doesn't sound good in the game. I know Jason David Frank does come back to voice Draken, but it sounds off.
Because when he's not seen at his Jesus gym teaching people that Jesus didn't tap, he can be seen doing anything for $10 that's Power Rangers related.
Well, you know what? I will say this about JDF. He really does like the fan community. I've never read anything negative about the guy.
Yeah, I'm only joking. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm just saying, like, it's a given at this point. If it's Power Rangers related,
he'll always be
he
there.
will show up somewhere. He'll do things for free. He'll do things for extra publicity. And I'm only joking about his gym because it's just like he's like he promotes Power Rangers and Christianity. that's basically all he does. No, he always apparently was. It's just that Saban wouldn't let him promote it back in the day.
Yeah, because I remember,
and his gym too.
Yeah,
he had a big tattoo that says Jesus didn't tap on it. And
when he had his MMA career.
And who is it he wanted to fight? Was it Van Damme or somebody he wanted?
I heard he wanted to fight CM Punk.
Probably. You know what?
I'm sorry.
You know what? That's a fight that CM Punk might have actually won.
Yeah. I mean, the Straight Edge Superstar versus the Green Ranger. I mean, take all my money.
But I mean, I remember the real interest in him coming back when he did was it for Machinima? He did the Scorpion versus...
that's Bat in the Sun, the superhero beatdown.
Yeah, where he put the costume on. It was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then that was around the time that they announced he was going to have a cameo in the movie.
Yeah, and then apparently he got, from what I read about that, he got removed from the red carpet premiere because he was trying to take a picture in the theater while they were showing the movie. And apparently he got ejected just a few minutes before his on-screen cameo in the 2017 film. And I was like, damn, son, you tossed Tommy?
That shows you it's like, I'm in the movie. Yeah, sure, you're a buddy.
Yeah. I've always been a huge fan of JDF, and I have read some stories about how he's not always the nicest guy and he can be rather obnoxious, but I'm pretty sure there's probably some negative stories of Jenny Young Bosch and Austin St. John. Everyone has light and dark parts to them.
Oh, absolutely.
But I love JDF as being an ambassador for Power Rangers. Same with Johnny Young Bosch and God, I forget who played Gia in Megaforce. She has been an incredible ambassador for the Power Rangers fandom, that actress. Sierra Hanna.
Which is
she showed.
Yeah. It's good to have good role models in kids' TV shows.
Yeah. But I mean, she's been very positive about her experience in the series. She's shown up in some Power Rangers fan stuff. She showed up in the Ninja Steel anniversary episode where Tommy fought evil Robo Tommy as the Black Dino Thunder Ranger,
which was I remember because it didn't air in Canada initially. You remember that?
Yeah,
Mike?
we had to find it.
You're like, Alex, I don't care how you find this. I don't care what quality it is. It was whether it has to be a torrent, whether it has to be somebody put a camera pointed at their TV.
Sacrifice all the babies.
You are getting a copy of it. I got it. We both watched it, and then the response was, "Oh God, that was the cheapest episode I've ever seen them produce ever."
It's like a great value brand, Shattered Grid.
It was Dollarama brand.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, so take all the salt. The Super Mega Force anniversary episode was better than the Ninja Steel one.
Because they actually budgeted an actual budget for it. This was one of those, hey, it's another anniversary episode. Should we do something?
Well, I mean, they spent money. They brought back Leo from Lost Galaxy, Carter from Lightspeed Rescue, like a whole lot of them, like they got them visas and flew them down. Like I was following all their stuff on Instagram about that.
They basically spent $50,000 to make an episode in today's day and age, where it costs $200,000 or $300,000 to make an episode minimum of any TV show. So
yeah, and
they still got away with it. Like basically, what they did is they paid for them all.
They showed up and took their helmets off.
Yeah, they showed up, took their helmets off, had to be on set for one day of shooting, and then probably got a week's paid vacation to be there. That's all. That's probably what a lot of them got.
Yeah.
Saban has been known to basically pay them scale, so they'll get like their $200 for the day, but then they'll get all their amenities covered. So they plan their vacations around these get-togethers and all these crossovers. Because hey, if you were offered a $3,000 all expenses paid vacation somewhere, you may as well take it for only having to work 1 hour.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember Jason Font, the guy who played Wes on Time Force. He's another of the Power Rangers actors that's been very positive and open about his time on the thing. And also watching, like, you ever follow him on Instagram, the dude is a loving father and an incredible dork, and I feel like I could have a beer with this man. But to bring it back to Shattered Grid, like I said, it's one of my favorite crossovers. And overall with this series, like the Power Rangers series, they've done some really interesting things. Like they've fleshed out the Rangers' history. They've made actual characters of Bulk and Skull. They've had really intriguing and dark moments. One of my favorite dark moments was in Go-Go. Since it's set before Tommy, Kimberly has this boyfriend named Matthew, this dude is he is the Steve Rogers of Angel Grove High. Like he is cooler than Zach. He's as buff as Jason. He's like a big brother to Billy. And he ends up getting fucking traumatized because at one point he's kidnapped by Rita and copied by a putty. That just incredibly messes him up. He eventually gets back with Kimberly, and then he figures out that the Rangers are the Rangers, and he's like, guys, I know, just tell me. And they don't tell him, and then he's like, fine, screw you guys, and he ignores them, like just writes them all out of his life. And
that was a great moment too. He's like, look, if you're not going to be straight with me, if you're going to lie to my face, then
tell me now or I'm gone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a moment where they want to tell him he knows everything. He's got them dead to rights. He's seen them morph. Like there was even like a fake Matthew created out of magical clay, and he was held captive on the moon. He knows every goddamn thing that could possibly be known, and they still choose to lie to him. So
yeah, it's like this Vine. Was it Darius Benson? I love watching those compilations on YouTube. It's the one where he walks in the room and he plays the roach in himself, and he's like, I can see you. No, you can't. That's the same reaction the Rangers gave him. They're like, we're not Rangers. No. It's like the Mark Wahlberg thing from The Happening. Like,
oh yeah, the what? No.
And that was what was so powerful about that moment in the comics. It's like, guys, just tell him. It's not like you don't have the technology to mind wipe him. Like,
yeah,
you're being dicks right now. Like, come on.
And my final thoughts on the comics, the part I laughed at because I was like, I wasn't expecting it, was when Draken kills Finster. He's like giving him a hug.
Snaps his neck.
Well, yeah, but he's
I know.
He's like, no, it's too dangerous. Basically, like, I love you, and he's like, I know. And then he does like a Steven Seagal neck snap on him.
Yeah, I laugh, but it's like, oh my god!
Like he's like, I know, I love you too.
Yeah. I also love, like, it gave me a dark, sinister subcockles of my heart chuckle when you see the world that Draken creates, and he literally just wants to be Superman and Batman at the same time. Like, he walks out of the front porch of, Ma and Pa Oliver, rips open his shirt Superman style and shouts, "It's morphing time," and flies off in his, what I'm just calling straight up the Black Dragon mode.
His Evolution 3, yeah.
Yeah, Super Saiyan 3. And he goes to fight, like, energy versions of... I don't know if you guys noticed, like, he's always fighting the White Tiger and Falcon spirits.
Yep.
despite having them, and then no one notices that, like, they're sitting on the shore there, and they're like, no, we're just supposed to sit here just in case. It's not like Draken's not going to save the day. And it goes back to stately Oliver Manor, and like he's got Billy buffing his car, and Finster literally becomes Alfred. And it just shows how broken Draken is, and like he just wants to be loved, but he's so far gone he can't admit it.
And the dialogue where he starts talking like Raul Julia in Street Fighter, it's all like, "But I'm a god. You must do as I say." But
and like fell from heaven like lightning.
He goes, "But you should be obeying me. This is from the before time. But I'm a god now. You don't exist. You're all imaginary."
What hope do you have to defeat me?
Yes, so over the top.
Friend of the show, a guy I record with almost every week, Ben the Host Carver, Animation Aficionados, I would be remiss if I didn't use his requisite line, "The Ragers save the day through the power of friendship." Because that's literally how Spirit Tommy is able to defeat Draken they're in the heart of the Morphin Master. And he's like, "Why won't you die?" And he's like, "Because I have my friends." And he just gives him like that one-hand arm shove. And a very nitpicky fan thing, I love in a very few of the issues when Tommy throws a kick or a punch, he does that, yeah, like the way Jason David Frank would do in the show. Like every time they do that, my inner fanboy squeals with glee.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, like, you're saying that the power of friendship, and I know, you're going to, at the end of this here in a minute or so, explain what our next episode is going to be with crossovers, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if they did a Care Bears Power Rangers crossover. It's like the power of friendship. Stare.
I'm sorry, you can't see it right now, but my eye is twitching in a very uncomfortable manner.
Because I was just thinking, all I could picture was like Rita Repulsa and No Heart. Just like working over a cauldron.
And suddenly I'm on board with this comic, Alex. Yeah. You are a magician, sir.
Just imagine, Goldar and all them having to work with all
Beastly and Shrieky.
Yes.
Oh God.
And I'm literally picturing, like the Care Bears and I guess was it the other animals as well, like getting
Care Bear cousins
getting their own like morphers.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because one team up I did not expect was Ninja Turtles Power Rangers, and we can talk about that next time, actually.
Yeah, so I'll bring it up here, folks. Yeah, next episode we're going to be talking about our favorite crossovers, why they work, what works, what sometimes you don't expect to work, but dear God, these mad geniuses managed to make it work. And just, I'm going to bit of a preview. I like bad crossovers too.
As do I, because sometimes they're goofy and stupid. Other times they're like, the fuck is this?
I'm sorry, was Alex just possessed by the spirit of Blanchard for a second?
Perhaps.
But yeah, so we will be talking about that all that and more right here on TWIG Sunday Funnies. Hopefully JT will be taking the hosting reins of this, but then again, he's just starting to ease into it, folks. So be ready. This is his version of Go-Go Power Rangers. It's before he's taken on the main hosting duties. So anyway, guys, this has been a fantastically fun time. I do recommend you do read Boom Studios Power Rangers books. Do pick them up and trade if they do happen to go on sale. It's a fantastic read. You can jump in at Shattered Grid if you want, but if you want to go back and reread every volume that's been released so far, you're not wasting your time. The Power Rangers team from 1960 is a particularly interesting arc. And everything that happens in between. So for This Week in Geeks, TWIG Sunday Funnies, we have been
JT from Saskatoon,
Alex, the producer,
and this is Mike the Birdman Dodd saying, see you in the funny pages. We'll be back next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored. You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at thisweekingeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at thisweekingeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens. What? It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.